Welcome to the Nitro College Football Show. My name is Burl and he is Streit. We are talking the 2025 season national preview. So we're going to talk about how we think this season's going to go for all the different conferences and touch on some of the bigger stories. So Streit, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we're going to be covering the major conferences except for the SEC, who we'll cover next week, and then particularly Georgia we'll cover in 2 weeks. So we'll be covering the Big 10, Big 12, ACC, a little bit of Notre Dame, a little bit of G5. But starting right out, not all the major polls are out yet, but the coaches poll was released this week. And if you take a look at the coaches poll right there at the top, two teams that meet week 1, Texas and Ohio State, open up as your number 1 and number 2 teams in the country, followed by Penn State at number 3, Georgia at 4, Notre Dame at 5.
So let's talk about that top 5. Any surprises there?
I'm surprised Georgia's there, to be honest with you.
I am too. Actually, really am.
Yeah, just the talk of the offseason. I'm really surprised that Clemson's at 6. Honestly, I thought you'd see Clemson up there at around 4. Notre Dame at 5 is fine, though they have some unsettledness, at the quarterback position. But I would think Georgia would probably be a little bit lower when the AP poll comes out in a couple weeks.
I'm a little surprised Ohio State's number 2. I know they are loaded with talent as far as blue chip ratio goes, but they're replacing a lot this year.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I mean, I think it's been pretty consistent. Texas, Ohio State, Penn State are going to be your top 3, and then surprise it's not Clemson there. But Georgia, Notre Dame, Clemson. And then rounding out at the bottom of the top 10, you've got Oregon, Alabama, LSU, and Miami. So,
yeah, Miami's a little surprising being ranked that high.
Yeah, that is surprising. I think they've got a lot to answer for. They were, the top scoring team in the country last year, but they got to find some defense. And there's still questions about Carson Beck as well. So
it's true. That's true. Yeah, I just wonder if they're going to find any defense at all.
Yeah. Any other surprises there in the coaches poll, bro?
Not really. I think Arizona State should probably be ranked a little higher, at least in front of Miami. As far as the rest go, South Carolina at 13 seems about right. Michigan, Ole Miss, SMU. Yeah, I mean, that's all kind of expected. I guess a little shocking that Indiana's ranked number 19.
Yeah. In Tennessee at 18 as well. It's interesting because you wonder what Tennessee would have been ranked if Nico would have stuck around.
True.
Coming off of a playoff year, both Tennessee and Indiana playoff teams last year. The other interesting one that I see that jumps at me immediately, they're at number 24, Texas Tech.
Yeah.
It's the great experiment. And if you've seen the news this week, they are poised to sign 2 of the top players in the 2027 class with huge NIL deals. Their general manager has blatantly come out and said that they're going to pay more than other people. It's going to be a great experiment because they were a really good offense last year, but a horrible defense. So them coming in at 24, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm a little shocked that BYU is in the top 25 right now, considering they lost their quarterback and who knows what else right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple teams that just missed the cut: Oklahoma, Missouri, Louisville. Those are ones you expect to see, I think, maybe in the AP poll. And then, interesting enough, North Carolina's not there. So, even though people like to talk about Belichick, they're not too keen to put them up in the rankings just yet.
Yeah, I would have expected Missouri to be in the top 25 at least, but we'll see.
Yeah. So your top rated non-Power 5 team is Boise State, coming in at number 25. So could be another repeat of last year where Boise State is your G5 representative when we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty much going to be the front runner until proven otherwise.
Right. So heading into the 2025 season, there are a couple of big national stories, and we kind of touched on a lot of these a few weeks ago when we did our episode where we answered some of the biggest questions coming into the season. But I did want to touch on them again. Big stories this year: Bill Belichick at UNC. We're going to see what happens if that's a complete and total train wreck or if he really gets that program going. Ohio State, can they sustain and go for a repeat? Obviously, we had Georgia repeat a couple years ago. And the model of winning the last few years has been experienced teams that supplement through the transfer portal and have immense talent to win. The last three national champions all kind of fit that mold. Georgia in 2022 had that returning core, Michigan in 2023, and Ohio State in 2024. So if you're looking for a team that fits that mold this year, it's probably Penn State, who is another national story poised for a breakout.
Also, I just think it's even harder to repeat with the expanded playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another national story is Clemson. Is this Clemson team going to continue to dominate its conference? And is it good enough to compete with the big boys from the SEC and the Big Ten? You know, SEC and Big Ten have kind of taken over, and this Clemson team feels like they might have the talent to do it. And so that's going to be a story to watch as this season unfolds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. If you like this content, hit that subscribe button, like this video. We really appreciate it. And keep watching.
All right. So now we're going to get into the conferences. We're going to start with the Big Ten. There's a lot of big stories in the Big Ten. Just like the SEC, they are the rulers of college football this day and age. And I'm going to start right at the top. We mentioned them before. I think Penn State is probably your biggest story in the Big Ten coming into this year. They're kind of taking that mold that Ohio State and Michigan did the last couple of years. A lot of returning people coming back. They've got 14 starters. They've got Drew Aller at quarterback. They've got two awesome running backs, Zane Durant and A.J. Harris on defense. Burl, do you think this is the year that Penn State can finally put it all together and get over the hump that's been Ohio State, Michigan, that kind of group for them?
I think yes. I think this is the best opportunity that they have had in a very long time. There's two pieces to this. Can Drew Aller prove that he's that top tier quarterback? And then the other thing is, can James Franklin not coach his way out of a victory?
Yeah. I mean, I think he's trying, right? He went out and got Ohio State's defensive coordinator to help bolster their defense. He's got stars on offense. He's got Drew Aller back there, and he's got Katron Allen and Singleton back there running the ball. So if they can kind of continue the success that they had at the end of last year, it's just a question of getting over the hump in the conference.
Yeah, and I think they can do it. They've got probably the most talent. Well, no, they don't have the most talent in the Big Ten. That's Ohio State, just from blue chip ratio. But as far as returning talent, they've got the most people returning. You got a lot of people that could have gone to the NFL last year that didn't, and they're coming back. That's a trend that is proven to be successful with national championship teams. You get the right people to come back, and boom, the chips fall right in place.
So after Penn State, obviously our next big attention is Ohio State. Obviously looking for a repeat, looking to become the first team since Georgia in 2021-22 to repeat. And they've, starting right at the top, they've got two of the best players in the country leading that team. Jeremiah Smith, fantastic wide receiver. Caleb Downs, great safety, punt returner. But the question is, can they find enough to plug in for those guys that they did lose? They did lose their defensive coordinator. They lost their offensive coordinator. So they've got a new coaching staff. They're under Ryan Day. And they need to find a quarterback. Julian Sayin looks like he's going to get the starting job, but you don't know until they hit the field. And then their big question is, can they finally beat Michigan? Because despite winning the national championship last year, I think their bigger goal this year is to break their 4-year drought to Michigan.
Yeah, that's going to be the number one thing on their whiteboard, right? At the beginning of the year, you have a theme, something that you can rally around. A couple of years ago for Michigan, it was beat Georgia, and that was their motto to win the national championship, and they did, with some controversy. But that's a discussion for another day. But for Ohio State, like you said, a lot of holes to fill. And with their quarterback situation, they are spending a lot of money on their quarterback situation. So we'll see how that pans out for them, because if you're spending a lot on one position, that means you're not on another position. Now, that might not mean anything right now in this early stage of the whole clearinghouse stuff, trying to get figured out, but that'll be something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And, for Ohio State, it's interesting because you're defending national champion and you're going to open the year against Texas, a team who we just saw in the coaches poll is picked ahead of you and was a really close game when they played in the semifinals in the playoff last year. The fumble that Ohio State took back kind of put the game out of reach, but that was a really competitive game. And you're going to see week one if this team has found some answers at the positions that they lost people, or if it's going to be, one of those situations where they've got to develop guys throughout the year. It's going to be a real fun game. I think they said this is the first time that the teams that are opening number 1 and number 2 in the preseason polls are playing week 1. So that's going to be a cool situation. It's going to be a great environment to open the season, and it'll be fun.
Yeah, that's definitely a game to circle on the calendar, and even better that it's week 1. I don't think we're going to learn a lot about these teams after the first week. Normally in a big game like that, you feel like you will learn a lot. I mean, we will learn some things, but the first game of the year, doesn't matter who it is, that's not the team that you finish with. And both these teams coming in are starting new quarterbacks. Ohio State has to replace all their starters on the offensive line and 9 people from the defense. So, like, who's going to step up and be that leader, heart and soul of the team, like Jack Sawyer was last year?
This game is kind of comparable to the 2021 Georgia Clemson game, right? Both of those, Georgia and Clemson, both coming out that year, had some questions. They'd both been good teams. Clemson in particular had the Trevor Lawrence years, and so they didn't know really what Clemson was going to be. They knew they were going to have a good defense, right? And Georgia knew they were going to have a good defense, and that game was a slobber knocker defensive battle that Georgia ended up winning, and Georgia rode that momentum throughout the season, eventually to a national championship. Clemson kind of fell off. So you wonder if the results of that first week's game really won't have long-term effects on conference records because it's out of conference, but to the team that wins, that might give them that jolt of confidence that they need to continue to be that team that sits at the top of the poll the rest of the season.
True. But it could also be the motivating factor for the losing team to just go on fire. Think right. Notre Dame last year after Northern Illinois.
You're right.
Think Ohio State after Michigan last year.
Well, that was their coach playing for his job, which was crazy to think that if Ohio State would not have won a national championship, Ryan Day might have been fired.
He might have. So, okay. So that actually makes me think of something interesting. So they win the national championship last year. Does that give Ryan Day kind of an air of relief, maybe lead to some complacency?
I don't know. I mean, people said the same thing about Kirby, right? The expectations hadn't gotten over the hump yet, had not won the national championship. No, I don't think so. At least not yet, anyway. Not with the players he's got coming back from that team, the star players he's got coming back. I don't think so yet. Now, down the road, if they win again, then you could see that, because you did kind of see that at Georgia. Not complacency, but just...
It happens.
Right?
It happens to everybody. It even happened to the Nick Saban Alabama teams. That's why they didn't win it every year. It was more like every other year.
Right. All right. So other than Ohio State, our other playoff team from last year out of the Big Ten was Indiana. And this is a school that has gotten a lot of press because their coach has made it a point to say that they're not going to schedule tough out of conference. So we're going to find out if Indiana, coming off their best season in school history, is for real or not. And to me, the whole schedule comes down to 2 games, right? They've got away games at Oregon and Penn State. The rest of their schedule should be very winnable. But Burl, do you think that if they lose those 2 games and they get beat bad, could they go 10-2 and miss the playoff?
If they could be bad, yeah, they could. Because who on their schedule can they point to as a huge win?
I don't know. I mean, I think their toughest other game is like Iowa, and we don't know what Iowa's going to be. Are they going to be what they were a couple years ago, or what they've been the last couple years? So I don't know.
Did they play Michigan again this year?
Indiana? I don't think so. Let me check. So no, they don't play Michigan. They play Iowa. They have Illinois, and then of course they have Oregon, and they have Penn State. Those are their tougher games, I would say.
Yeah, Illinois. That if they can pull that game out and keep the other 2 close, then I think they make the playoff.
So you think they're for real, or do you think they're a pretender? Was that a 1-year? Kurt Signetti saw an opportunity, took it, and they're going to go back to being what they've been for most of their history.
I feel like it's a 1-year thing, but given that they're opting for the easiest schedule possible, I mean, they are literally trying to get the easiest schedule possible, and no one can argue that. If you could put that in the comments. You can debate us in the comments about Indiana, but they backed out of a game against Virginia. Scary Virginia. I feel like they're kind of a 1-year nice story, and maybe will be like a middle tier Big Ten team that maybe every now and then has a team that surprises people.
So they'll be like Michigan State.
Yeah, kind of. Well, back when Michigan State was actually.
Hey, Michigan State made the college football playoff. Don't forget that.
They did a long time ago.
All right. So next team I want to talk about is Michigan. Michigan has a ton of momentum from the end of the year last year. They closed the season beating Ohio State and then beating Alabama in the bowl game. And they've got the number 1 recruit in the country coming in to play quarterback. Looks like he's probably going to get the start. Does Michigan ride that momentum back to what they were 2 years ago?
I think Michigan is probably the most dangerous team in the Big Ten. Because you look at how they did last year. They had everything except a passing game. And I said it many times last year. If they figured out how to complete a forward pass, they were going to be real dangerous. Because just watching their games, they are moving people on both sides of the ball. They play great defense. The other big wild card for Michigan is their head coaching situation with all of the scandal stuff going on.
Right. So Sharon Moore is suspended. What? But it's not. It's starting like week 3, right?
Well, it's like week 3 and then week 5 or something. Just
yeah. So,
but still, if anything else comes out of the NCAA rulings,
yeah, because that was self-imposed, right? So yeah, they could make a decision to give him something more. They've got a week 2 game against Oklahoma. And so Oklahoma obviously coming off a disappointing year, hoping to get back. That could be interesting because you've got these 2 schools, traditional powers, both disappointing years last year, looking to get back. We'll see what happens there. The schedule is kind of nice for them. They don't play Oregon, they don't play Penn State, and they don't play Indiana this year. So they avoid 3 teams that were in the playoff last year. They do play Ohio State, of course, at the end of the year. So that sets up pretty nice for them. If they can get that momentum going with Underwood, if he gets, comfortable by the end of the season, it's the last game of the year, it won't matter that he's a freshman when they go to play Ohio State. So definitely look for Michigan. If they if they get that win early over Oklahoma, really look for them to kind of get it going, and then it'll come down to that game against Ohio State.
Yeah, that Oklahoma game, that's going to be a really big game for both of those teams. I think we'll learn a lot about both of those teams in that game because they'll have at least a week or two under their belts and ready to step up the competition.
Yeah. All right. Last thing we want to talk about in the Big Ten is Oregon, your defending conference champion who won the league first year, was undefeated, number one a lot of the season last year, but then the season kind of ended disappointing with a blowout loss to Ohio State. The schedule looks good. Once again, they kind of have it scheduled where their two toughest games are right in the middle of the year and they're back to back. They play Penn State and Indiana back to back. But those are the only games on their conference or on their schedule right now that are ranked teams going into the season. So they could be set up nicely to have a good run, maybe only drop one of those games and they're back in the conference championship. A lot's going to fall on Dante Moore. They placed a lot of confidence in Dante Moore. They bucked the system for this year. They didn't go out and get a transfer quarterback. This is the guy they signed a couple years ago. Uber talented. Dan Lanning loves him. And they did pick up a big-time player in the portal, number 2 overall player, actually, Isaiah World, a 6'8", 309 tackle from Nevada, who,
wow. What a great name.
He looks like he's going to – right. His name is Isaiah World, and he's 6'8".
Like, how is this guy not on the all-name list? I've seen a million of those this year, and, that's up there with King Large.
Right. So what do you think though? What do you think for Oregon, Burl? Is it another successful year 2 in the Big Ten, or do they come a little bit back to reality this year?
I think they're still going to have success. They've got a good program there. Dan Lanning's doing a great job of managing that program, and I think for them it's just more of okay, reload and let's go.
All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of give who we think is going to meet up in the conference championship game. We're not going to give our conference champion. We'll do that in a couple of weeks when we do the Georgia preview show. But in terms of who we think is going to, appear in that conference championship game, looking at the schedules, I mean, your two strongest teams, I think, are Ohio State and Penn State. Yes, they will meet in the regular season, but I think it sets up that you're going to have a rematch in the Big Ten championship this year.
Yeah, that I was just thinking that is a huge possibility. But I could also see it being Michigan and Penn State.
Yeah, it absolutely could be. It just depends on that game, right? At the end of the year, Ohio State and Michigan, a lot's going to come down to that, I think, this year. Whereas last year, Michigan winning may have actually helped Ohio State because it gave them that extra motivation and they didn't have to go play in that conference championship. They kind of had that time to get themselves right. But maybe this year.
I guess this year we'll still have that debate on whether being in your conference championship is helpful or harmful.
So just for fun, I ran a season through EA Sports College Football just to kind of see what they thought would shake out for the league this year. In their prediction or their simulation, Oregon finishes the year at 11-1, and Penn State also goes 11-1. So those are the teams that they thought were going to meet up in the Big Ten championship. Funny enough, they had Ohio State going 7-5. So
wow,
I don't know if that's going to happen, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah, there's no way UCLA finishes above Ohio State. All right. If you're still with us and you love this content and you love college football, give us a like, hit subscribe, and leave some comments. Let us know what you think. How do you think the Big Ten is going to shake out this year? Let us know. All right. So now, while we're in Big Ten country, we'll go to a pseudo Big Ten /ACC team. And of course, we're talking about Notre Dame. They're primed for a pretty big year. In my opinion, the biggest question mark that they're going to have is at their quarterback position because they're replacing Riley Leonard. But they have 3 running backs that are candidates for the Doak Walker Award, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And one of them is probably going to be in New York for the Heisman.
Yeah, the running back room is dynamic, led by Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. They are going to have more touchdowns this year because Riley Leonard ran the ball a lot last year and scored 17 touchdowns. So the running back room is certainly going to put up stats. CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie are still battling it out. They haven't named a starter yet. So I think that's a battle to watch over the next couple of weeks. And I think for Notre Dame this year, their 2 toughest games are their first 2 games of the season. They open the year with Miami, and then they play Texas A&M week 2. If they win both those games, Notre Dame's probably going to go undefeated.
Would not shock me. Would not shock me at all.
Is Notre Dame going to make the playoff this year? Almost assuredly. It would be a collapse if they don't.
Even if they win 1 out of 2 of those games, I think they still make the playoff pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, they made the playoff last year and they lost to Northern Illinois. So they're going to probably be back in the playoff this year. And, last year, getting to the national championship game, getting over that stigma of Notre Dame can't compete on the national stage, and showing up and playing well against Ohio State in the national championship game. They got a great young coach. I think they're going to be right back there. They're going to be one to look out for. They won't be up at the very top of the polls, but they're going to be right there.
And this isn't your grandfather's Notre Dame squad anymore. Marcus Freeman has them rolling and headed in the right direction. Absolutely. And he's actually made Notre Dame likable for non-Notre Dame fans, because it's very hard to pull against Marcus Freeman. He's such an awesome coach, great dude, and you can see why people want to play for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Up next, we're going to talk a little bit about the Big 12. Obviously, Arizona State, your defending champion. Burl, talk a little bit about the big news stories going on in the Big 12 this year.
All right, so at the top of the list, we'll start in Manhattan, Kansas State. And the big question coming out of Kansas State is all about Avery Johnson. Is this the year he becomes a star and takes Kansas to the promised land?
Yeah, he was a big-time recruit out of high school. He was part of that same class that had Arch Manning, Nico in it, Jackson Arnold, Dante Moore. So a lot of those guys are kind of stepping up their game this year as starters, and we're going to see if he can. Last year, he had a pretty solid year for them, 2,700 yards, 25 touchdowns, but 10 picks. So for him, he's got to clean up the turnovers a little bit. He's a good running quarterback, 600 yards rushing last year, but I think they're really going to rely on him to be a star. Don't forget that Kansas State won the conference a couple years ago, the year that TCU went to the national championship. They didn't win the conference championship. Kansas State did. I think they are set up to be one of the stronger teams in the Big 12 this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Big 12 is going to be really fun to watch this year.
I think so too. I think it's a conference as a whole that has gotten a lot better. I think last year was kind of a transition year, new teams in the conference, people coming back in. I think this year they're set up to really make some noise nationally, and maybe they get 2 teams in the playoffs this year instead of just 1.
They very well could. I could see that. I mean, just looking at the list of teams here, if Arizona State ends up really being a for real contender, then count them in. And Iowa State is going to be right there. They've been kind of borderline. I mean, they were close last year with Rocco Beck, right? And the big wild card, Texas Tech.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about Arizona State. Obviously, Arizona State has the highest returning of production percentage in the country. They returned 17 starters, and they've got Sam Leavitt back. Now, they did lose Cam Scatabo, who was a big part of their offense, but the question is Kenny Dillingham going to keep that program going in the right direction? They came out of nowhere last year. Are they going to be a consistent contender this fall?
I believe in Arizona State.
Yeah, I believe in Kenny Dillingham, right?
Yeah, I believe in Kenny Dillingham like I believe in Joe Hendry.
Just, an infectious, positive guy who loves the program, and he's got the right quarterback, man. Sam Leavitt, I really think has a chance to be a star. If he puts together another year, continues to get better on what he had last year, and they win the conference again, he'll be in New York. I absolutely think that.
Yeah, my biggest concern with Arizona State is the loss of Cam Scatabo. He was the worker. He was what made that team go last year. We saw that evidence in the playoffs where he took over that Texas game.
Yeah. And I think he had to, though. I think they really struggled at wide receiver last year. They were very inconsistent. But I think some of those guys were young or injured last year. They're back. I think the passing game is going to take a step up this year, especially with Leavitt leading the way. They won't have to lean on a running back as much if they get better production out of their receivers.
Yeah, and we know Kenny Dillingham is going to have those boys prepared.
Yeah. So next team, you already mentioned them, is Iowa State. Last year, once again, crazy stat. Iowa State had their first 10-win season in school history last year. For a long time, Matt Campbell has long been seen as this rising star in the coaching profession, but he's stayed there. They made it to the conference championship game last year, but they ran into a hot Arizona State team. So the question is, can they get another 10-win season this year, and can they get back and finally win that conference championship?
Well, for them, they have one of the most important things that you need to be successful in football: a seasoned quarterback.
Yeah, Rocco Beck.
Yeah, Rocco Beck was really solid last year. One of my favorite names of any player in college football. He was very poised, had a lot of moxie, and was able to really put the team on his back last year and carry them to where, as far as they were able to make it.
Yeah. I think the story of the season is going to be the 3-game stretch that they have from October 11th through November 1st. So they play at Colorado on October 11th, at home against BYU on the 25th, and then they play at home against Arizona State on November 1st. Those 3 games will tell the story of what this team becomes. Those were arguably the 3 other best teams in the conference last year. So getting them over a 4-week span, 3 games in a 4-week span, that's going to tell the tale right there.
Yeah, and Iowa State seems like they've been one of those teams that's been on the verge of making it to that next level, and I like pulling for them because their thing is go clones.
Right.
Yeah. Star Wars reference, y'all.
So next team we want to talk about, and this is, like you mentioned, the wild card, maybe in all of college football, and that's Texas Tech. They are this year's version of Ole Miss, spending money to see what they can do and see if they can turn a program that hasn't been overly successful in recent years into a winner. Last year, they were great. They were a great offensive team last year, but they were absolutely horrible on defense. They were the number 4 scoring offense in the country, but 122nd on scoring defense. So they really needed to get their defense up to the same standard that they have on offense. And like I said, they spent money in the portal class, number 2 ranked portal class. They brought in 13 4-star rated players in the portal class.
Yeah, they broke out the checkbook big time. We're seeing that not just in the portal class, but in high school recruiting too. We've seen that a lot recently, actually.
Yeah.
But
the star players in their portal class. There was the receiver from Texas A&M. Can't think of his name off the top of the head right now. Was a big deal, 5-star player. And then they kind of focused their top transfer guys at the edge and the offensive line. So they brought in edge rusher David Bailey from Stanford, and they brought in Romello Height from Georgia Tech. And then on the offensive side of the ball, they brought in Howard Sampson from North Carolina, as well as Hunter Zambrano. So focusing on the lines to build out to make that team tougher, because the defense just got pushed around and scored on a lot last year.
Yeah, I mean that's where you focus your energy for a good football team. Kirby's been doing that for years. You start at the line of scrimmage and go from there.
Yeah. So they've got an administrative behind them. It'll be interesting to see. They've certainly invested the money. And so we'll see if they can, like I said, if they can make that scoring defense 60th in the country, they're going to win a lot of football games this year.
Yeah, I'll be watching some Texas Tech. I've always been partial to them as I went to Madison County High School. Go Red Raiders.
Next team we're going to talk about, Colorado. We talked about him a lot a few weeks ago. Obviously, good news on Deion's health, that he's going to be there. Still may have an impact. You know, the recovering from cancer, you're never really fully recovered. Hope it doesn't cause him to miss time. But I think more important than that, the question is, can they find a running game? Dead last in all of the FBS in rushing last year at only 65 yards per game. You're going to have to run the ball if you want to win.
Yeah. With the big health scare for Deion, that can go one of two ways for this team. It could mean that they drop the ball on a lot of stuff because he can't put in the time that he might need to, like if he has to step away for health. Or it could be a rallying point. You know, I think it's going to end up being more of a rallying point than anything. So I'm actually starting to get behind Colorado a little bit, and you know, seeing them hopefully get some momentum, because I think it'd be a great story. Deion beating cancer, showing back up, helping build this team, take another step forward, maybe to continue that pattern of growth that you've seen out of Colorado the past few years.
Yeah,
you know,
I think we'll find out a lot week one. They play Georgia Tech week one. We know Georgia Tech's a tough team that likes to run the ball a lot, and if you're going to hang with Georgia Tech, you're going to have to be able to run the football, or else they'll beat you up.
The battle of the 91 national championship.
90 split national championship.
90 split championship. I was 1 year off, damn it.
All right. Last thing, couple of quick hitters here just in the conference, and this is related to coaching. So first off, at Oklahoma State, had a total disaster of a year last year. Mike Gundy, he's a man. He's not 40 anymore. He's 60. Are we going to see the end of the Mike Gundy era? He's been there since Les Miles left, and if they don't recover, he took a pay cut to stay this year. Are we going to see the end of the Mike Gundy era at Oklahoma State?
I hope not. He's always one of the great characters throughout the season. Obviously with the "I'm a man, I'm 40" press conference, and then recently with the mullet and just having that crazy hairdo. But yeah, I mean, he's we talk a lot about how James Franklin's the Mark Richt of the Big Ten. Mike Gundy's the Mark Richt of the Big 12.
You're not wrong there. It's interesting. It'd be hard. Whoever has to end up following up Mike Gundy, it's going to be very weird, because you've had two big personalities as the last two coaches at Oklahoma State. You had Les Miles, and then you had Mike Gundy. So whoever it is, maybe they're just more down to a straight, football guy. But yeah, Oklahoma State was a mitigated disaster last year. Hopefully they get better. A couple other schools that are also looking to kind of recapture old success, and they're doing this by bringing in previous coaches. West Virginia is bringing back Coach Rich Rodriguez, and Central Florida is bringing back Scott Frost. Both of these coaches, had great seasons at these schools. Obviously, Rich Rodriguez got hired at Alabama, or almost got hired at Alabama, before Nick Saban got the job, but he ended up going to Michigan and other places. And then Scott Frost took UCF from a winless team to an undefeated season, left and went on to Nebraska. Didn't quite have the success there, but he set up a program that Central Florida became a pretty good program. Josh Heupel came in after him, kind of used his mold of offense and parlayed that into the Tennessee job. So both of those coaches are going back home, looking to kind of recapture the magic that they had in the past.
Yeah, I'm actually excited for West Virginia. I kind of hope Rich Rod actually gets it back. I mean, yeah, obviously it's not going to be Pat White, Steve Slayton, although I think Pat White is one of the coaches now, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's hired back as an assistant of some type.
Yeah, I think someone in the comments one time called us out on that.
I think they did.
Yeah.
So just a couple important dates on the schedule this year in the Big 12. November 1st could be the day that decides the league winners. You got Arizona State taking on Iowa State that day, and Kansas State taking on Texas Tech. I think, those two matchups, the winners of those may be your teams playing for the conference championship. Other sneaky team that we didn't really touch much on that kind of had a quiet year last year because of injuries is Utah. Utah's been a very solid football team. Rough year last year. Look for them to bounce back a little bit this year and potentially be, in the conference championship race as well. And we didn't even talk about Baylor, who may be the overall best team in the conference. But picks for who we think is going to make it to the championship game. I got Kansas State and Arizona State. What do you think, bro?
Definitely Arizona State. Why I'm not sold on Baylor. Why should I be sold on Baylor?
They've got a good, very, very good recurring quarterback. They are a solid team. I think. What did they end up going last year? Hold on a second. Where did they go last year?
I know they got the money.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So Baylor went 8-5 last year, and they've, like I said, they've got a good coach in Dave Aranda. They've got a good returning quarterback. Lots of people are picking them to win. So I don't know if there's anything crazy exciting about them necessarily, but I think they are a solid team that will be one that's competing for the conference title.
Yeah, I would pick Arizona State and probably Iowa State, just because you have two returning quarterbacks, and Iowa State was there last year.
Yep.
So I think it's a rematch
of last year. So as for our EA Sports simulation, they've got Arizona State going 11-1 and taking on Texas Tech, who went 10-2 in the conference championship. Of note, Utah also went 10-2. So
I was really close to saying Texas Tech, honestly.
We'll see what happens. All right. So our next conference is the Atlantic Coast Conference. And just like it's kind of been in years past, is the major story in the conference. Is this Clemson's conference to rule over?
I think so. Until proven otherwise, it is. And this is probably one of the best teams that they've had in a while. You got a returning Cade Klubnik. You have 16 returning starters. People are touting Clemson's defensive line as the best defensive line in college football.
Yeah, they may have the best defensive lineman, at least in Peter Woods. And they've got two awesome linebackers in Wade Wooders and Sammy Brown back there. They've got a shot. They made the playoff last year in a down year for them. They were not healthy at all at running back for most of the year. Cade Klubnik's decision to come back really, really gave them kind of the momentum that they need. This may be Dabo's last best shot to win unless he decides to change his ways around the transfer portal and NIL and everything.
Yeah. A lot's going to hinge on Cade Klubnik for sure. But he showed us last year that he stepped it up. He hit stride and caught fire last year and carried that team. And if he hits that same type of stride this year, coupled with the best defensive line in college football, that's a good winning combination. Because
Right.
I mean, that's worked for Georgia.
And they don't have Georgia on the schedule this year to open up the year, so that helps them out too.
Yeah, so the combination of Cade Klubnik and having the best defensive line in college football, that's a recipe for success. I mean, we've seen it several times. I mean, Georgia's a great example of that. So I expect them to be right there in it, definitely in a playoff team until proven otherwise.
Right. So I guess the question is who's going to challenge Clemson this year? Who has the ability to come up and step with them? Because even last year, Clemson was kind of down, but they got to take on SMU in that conference championship game and they won. So I guess the first team you look at as a potential spoiler, and based on the preseason poll, they're in the top 10, and that's Miami, where our old friend Carson Beck has found a landing spot. And to expect Carson Beck to repeat the performance of Cam Ward, I don't know if he necessarily needs to. Miami was so good on offense last year. They led the country in scoring, but they were 68th in the country in scoring defense. So if Carson Beck is not as good as Cam Ward, but Miami gets better on defense, maybe that's all they need.
Yeah, I mean, they really just need a little bit more defense. It's not even, they don't need to have like a top 5 defense to make an impact on their season. Because like I said, if Carson Beck comes anywhere close to a Cam Ward like season, which I think he is capable, maybe not
2
like
years
with the
ago he did.
legs. Yeah, I mean he's got the arm talent. He can make all the throws, but is he going to be a transformative leader like Cam Ward was? Because we've seen videos Cam Ward with Shedeur Sanders, and and now early on with his in training camp with Tennessee Titans, dude's built different. So I don't know that Carson Beck is that same type of leader that Cam Ward was. And who knows if he even sees the field in the first few games.
So for Miami, they've got tough out of conference schedule this year. They get Notre Dame. I guess it's Notre Dame's turn in the rotation to play Miami in the ACC, and then they've got Florida. So they've got 2 really tough out of conference games. But the interesting thing, and the question continues to be, when Miami came to the ACC, they set it up so that it would be Miami and Florida State playing for conference championships every year. Miami's never made it to the ACC championship game. That's crazy.
It is. It's like, Texas A&M being in the SEC for 13 years and never playing Georgia, or Georgia never playing out there at Texas A&M.
Yeah. So
one of those weird things.
Last year, you kind of had Syracuse step up as a contender in the conference, and they ended up knocking Miami out. This year, I think the candidate to do that might be Louisville. Louisville's an interesting situation because we talked a little bit about Isaac Brown last week as a potential dark horse Heisman candidate. They've got Miller Moss coming in to play quarterback. And USC may have had a tough year last year, but until Miller Moss got hurt, he was actually putting up really good stats for USC, and they were scoring a lot of points. So him coming in, Isaac Brown being a great running back, maybe Louisville is the team that can step up and challenge Clemson.
They definitely could. I mean, they were in contention last year, before they dropped a few important games. But yeah, they were in the running, and if they get a little bit better than they did last year, which would assume that they would, They've got a great running back, one of the best freshman seasons we've seen in a while. And so I would expect them to be in the running right there at the end.
Yeah. Well, now what's interesting is the schedule plays out. Clemson and Louisville, they play on November 19th. So they're going to meet that week, and then 2 weeks later they may be, if they are both the tops of the conference, they may have a rematch in the conference championship, just 2 weeks later. So we'll see how that shakes out. Those are the teams that I see as kind of the big potential roadblocks for Clemson this year. It is Miami and Louisville. We love Fran Brown. We love Syracuse. I don't think they're going to be as strong as they were last year.
Yeah,
but there are some other. There is another
quarterback.
Yeah, but there is another team that potentially could be really good. And as much as it pains me to say it, I think that team is Georgia Tech.
I do too. I mean, they're kind of like dark horse sleeper to win, but at least make the ACC championship game.
Yeah. Haynes King, he proved in that game in Athens last year that all that hype he had out of high school when he first went to Texas A&M, he lived up to it. Tough as nails guy, running the football, but he can throw it too. And they've got a great running back in Jamal Haynes. Yes, they lost Eric Singleton to the transfer portal, but they replaced him with one of the best transfer receivers out there in Eric Rivers from Memphis, who had over 1,000 yards receiving last year. They got a couple of bookends on their schedule that could really determine that. They've got 2 out-of-conference games, opening the year against Colorado and closing the year versus Georgia. But outside of that Clemson game, their schedule's overall pretty light. They don't have to take on all the best in the conference. Maybe we see Georgia Tech taking on Clemson in the ACC championship.
I could totally see that happening. Do they play Miami this year, or are they done with them? Probably done with them. Yeah, because they did a home and home.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is the Georgia game, they decided to not play it at home this year, and it's going to be played in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta this year. That could be an interesting game. Black Friday afternoon. Obviously, the game last year was crazy, and for the Tech fans, their heart was broken. Tech hasn't beaten Georgia.
I almost felt bad for them.
Yeah. Tech hasn't beaten Georgia since 2016, and they've only beaten Georgia, 3 times in the last 25 years?
I think only 2 times.
No, they won in 2008. And then they won again in 2014 and 2016. So
I forgot about 2008. Space Odyssey.
Yep. Last question that we have in the ACC this year is, can Florida State recover?
Man. They're not going to recover to the point of where they were winning the ACC. If they do, then Mike Norvell deserves whatever top coaching prize there is.
If he got the worst coaching job prize last year,
yeah.
Does that mean he gets the best coaching job this year?
I mean, that would be the greatest turnaround for a coach ever.
Yeah. Listen, they got to play Alabama week 1. A angry Alabama team that missed the playoff, that seems kind of rejuvenated, that has a ton of talent.
Yeah.
And their transfer quarterback from Boston College is talking trash and doubling down on things.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I mean, you're talking trash to Alabama.
You remember those Atlanta kickoff games where Alabama was playing, I think, Virginia Tech one year and then USC one year, and it was just total bloodbaths?
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen again.
I do too.
So does FSU recover? Do they recover enough to not be 2-10 and look like the worst team in college football? Probably.
Yeah. They won't be the worst team in college football, but I don't see them being very good.
Do they recover enough to save Mike Norvell's job and his huge contract buyout?
I would say that they wouldn't improve enough to save his job, but that contract buyout's probably just a little too big for them to move off of it just yet.
And how many jokes do we get to tell about Florida State and the Gus Bus this year?
All of them. All of them. As many jokes as you can.
So a couple of important conference games in the ACC this year. We got Miami and SMU are playing on November 1st. Obviously, SMU was a playoff team last year in their first year in the league. That could be a big one. Just like Miami losing to Syracuse last year derailed them from making a conference title appearance. This could absolutely be it. And then the other big one I think we talked about before is November 19th. You got Clemson and Louisville. To me, those are the two favorites in the conference, and they're playing 2 weeks before the conference championship game. So that could potentially, if they are both jockeying for position or whatever, that could be an elimination game.
Very well could be. Or just sets them up for a rematch.
Yeah. So my picks for the teams to meet in the conference championship game are Clemson and Louisville. Burl, who do you think is going to play for that championship?
I think it's going to be Clemson, Georgia Tech.
Okay.
I believe in Haynes King. I mean, he's a absolute warrior. Proved that last year. And their head coach is hard-nosed, and he cares about that program, which I love to see, coaches coach at their alma mater, and, coaches that absolutely love their school. So they got that going for them, which is nice. And, I could totally see them. I think they're going to be in the ACC championship.
So for our EA Sports prediction, they've got Clemson taking on Miami in the conference championship game. But interesting enough, they've got Duke going 11-1. And the amount of money that Duke paid to get Daria Mensah to come in, maybe that happens.
That's surprising. That's shocking. See, this is why they talk about AI having hallucinations. It's a real thing.
Yep. So last thing for our national preview tonight, we want to hit on the group of 5. Last year we had Boise State have this great year, 11-1 regular season, only lost to Oregon. We had, a fantastic player in Ashton Jeanty. I don't know if there is a standout group of 5 team this year. Boise State looks like they might be that team again. They do have a game against Notre Dame. So obviously that will potentially be a tough one, but Jeanty's not on the roster anymore. A couple other teams that I saw when I was looking out there, Tulane, they've got a game against Ole Miss early in the season. If they win that, there's a good chance they run the table. They could potentially be that team. And then the third one to watch is UNLV, who last year was kind of in a position early in the year to be the favorite to get that spot. And then their quarterback quit on them. You remember that, to transfer?
Yeah.
And everything kind of fell apart. Well, Dan Mullen has taken over as the coach there. And that's another situation where he's got some players around him. We know the guy can coach. He's not a good recruiter, but he's a good coach. So maybe that's a situation there. Burl, you got any thoughts on the group of 5?
Group of 5 is always wild. Boise State's definitely the top tier stalwart there. Tulane, like you said, that's going to be really interesting. And you can't forget about the service academies. I mean, Army and Navy were right there last year.
Right. Army 10-2, but I called that upset by Navy.
You did.
All right. Well, that'll wrap up our national preview. As we said, next week we'll be back to preview the SEC, and then in 2 weeks we'll be back to preview Georgia, as well as the college football playoff. If you enjoy this show, please be sure to like and subscribe. And until next week, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.